Thank you. I now invite Roxanne Tarzan, the Executive Director, to provide you with an update to our 2013 annual report. And you received a copy of this when you registered, and it's also posted on NANB website for those who are hooking in live.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I go into the highlights from the annual report, I just want to say again, $7-point-something million equity is something that probably none of us individually would ever dream about seeing in our lives. But I want to underline that is the equity of you, the members of NANB. That's the stability and the capacity and the resource that you've created over, in 2016, 100 years. And across this country, many jurisdictions have sold their buildings, their leasing space. We do see a slight reduction in membership. It's very little in the last year or so, but this kind of stability then ensures that we can do our work and maintain the authority to regulate our own profession. So I want to thank you again for your support of our work and congratulate you on what we've all achieved. It's a privilege to highlight the 2013 annual report on behalf of our NANB Board of Directors. You've received a copy of that report and it's posted on the website. I'm only going to be providing overview today from the highlights of that report. Our mandate. NANB's legal authority to regulate registered nurses and nurse practitioners comes from the Nurses Act. NANB's mandate to protect the public and support nurses is achieved by establishing the requirements for registration, developing and maintaining standards for education and practice, and by promoting healthy public policy. Regulation is what makes nursing a profession, and nurses as individuals accountable to the public for the delivery of safe, competent, ethical nursing care. Our vision, Nurses Shaping Nursing for Healthy New Brunswickers. This report highlights some of the activities of NANB during 2013 and focuses on our regulatory mandate and advancing the contribution made by registered nurses towards this NANB vision. The NANB 2010-2013 strategic plan identified additional priorities to advance the NANB mandate in the public interest. The plan focused on ensuring adequate nursing human resources, supporting quality practice environments, maintaining and enhancing NANB's voice in the development of public policy in our province, and enhancing the public and you, the members' understanding of our NANB regulatory mandate. During the current year, the NANB Board of Directors has initiated strategic planning for 2015 to 2017 timeframe. This strategic plan will be finalized for the Board's consideration at their October meeting. Two of the previous strategic areas of focus will continue in this new plan, ensuring adequate nursing resources and enhancing the understanding of our regulatory mandate. Additionally, the plan will include activities to support our celebration of the NANB Centennial in 2016, our hosting of the 2016 CNA Biennium to be held in St. John, and once approved by the NANB Board, the plan will be shared with you, the NANB members, through all our communication tools and obviously on the NANB website. The strategic plan supports our mandate to regulate nursing in the interest of the public and defines how we seek to achieve that vision of shaping nursing for healthy New Brunswickers. Self-regulation recognizes that the public is best served when the nursing profession itself has regulatory authority over its own members. Regulatory functions include the development of standards of nursing education and nursing practice, setting the entry to practice standards for registered nurses and nurse practitioners, investigating and taking action on complaints received, and contributing to and promoting the development of public policy that advances the health of the population, including health human resource planning, to support an adequate workforce to meet the requirements of our health system. Entry to practice, I'm going to be highlighting our responsibilities in the areas of programs, registration, and member stats. A review of the NANB Standards of Nursing Education was conducted in 2012 and approved by the Board of Directors in February 2013. Standards are reviewed on a 5-year cycle. I want to underline when I say those words, what they mean is you, the nurses of New Brunswick who participate on our Education Advisory Committee, and if you're not on that committee, your peers are developing and maintaining and improving those standards. That's how self-regulation is enacted. A key responsibility of NANB under the Nurses Act is to approve nursing education programs to ensure that registered nurses and nurse practitioners are prepared to practice competently, safely, and ethically to meet the needs of the health system and the public. The purpose of the NANB nursing education approval process is to ensure that NANB standards of nursing education are met and graduates possess the competence required by the health system. Both the University of New Brunswick and Université de Moncton nurse practitioner programs underwent approval reviews in the fall of 2012. In February 2013, the programs were granted approval status by the NANB Board of Directors, and we congratulate you that, on a period of 3 years, during which progress reports are to be submitted to NANB. These progress reports facilitate the monitoring of each program's progress in meeting the recommendations identified in review reports. As well, the UNB Baccalaureate in Nursing Program approval review visit was conducted in February of 2013. In May, the program was granted approval status for a period of 5 years, during which one progress report is to be submitted to NANB, and we congratulate the UNB faculty on that. I want to highlight, Linda made this precision to the board, Linda Findlay, our Director of Regulatory Services. We have established the approval frame for nurse practitioner programs at 3 years because those programs were new. They're now over a decade old, so we will be looking at that and probably bringing some recommendations to our advisory committee. And our baccalaureate programs, which have existed for a number of decades, if meet all requirements, the maximum approval is for 5 years. The purpose of mandatory registration is to ensure initial and continued competence in order to protect the public. Competence on initial registration is partly demonstrated by the successful completion of an approved nursing education program and by passing the registered nurse or nurse practitioner entry to practice exams. All Canadian RN regulators, with the exception of Quebec, will be transitioning to the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, NCSBN, NCLEX RN entrance exam as of January 2015. As NANB's Executive Director, I am a member of that transition team, which is overseeing the work required to realize a successful implementation of the NCLEX exam. The transition plan is on time and on target, and information about this work has been provided to educators, students, interested members, and stakeholders through a series of bulletins distributed throughout the year. And those bulletins are also posted on the NANB website if you're interested. The NCLEX communique, launched in the winter of 2013, is published quarterly and supports ongoing communication. A regional seminar conducted by NCSBN in conjunction with NANB, and we partnered with the Association of Registered Nurses of Prince Edward Island, was held in Moncton on November the 1st, 2013. The purpose of that seminar was to provide information to educators who will be preparing students to take the NCLEX exam. National NCLEX conferences were held in 2012 and 2013. A regional conference focusing on the development of NCLEX items is scheduled for this September and will be open to educators in the 4 Atlantic provinces and will be held in Halifax. And we expect to be sending out announcements of the exact location probably in the next 2 weeks. A cornerstone of the NCLEX RN exam development is a practice analysis. This process, conducted every 3 years, helps the test developers to get a clear understanding of current entry-level RN practice and ensures that the NCLEX RN exam is assessing appropriate nursing competence. So I want to remind you, the goal of an entrance exam is to show minimal entry to practice competence so the public is safe when they receive care from new graduates. A practice analysis survey of entry-level registered nurses, including recent New Brunswick graduates, took place in October of 2013 and will be an ongoing requirement of exam maintenance as we go forward. The Canadian Council of Registered Nurse Regulators has received funding from Human Resources and Skills Development Canada to complete a nurse practitioner practice analysis study as well. The purpose of that study is to confirm the similarity of nurse practitioner practice and competence across Canada, and it will support the development of a national approach for NP entry-level exams. The NP practice analysis will provide an accurate description of NP practice and the knowledge, skills, and abilities required by NPs in each of the 3 streams of practice. Family all ages, and I need to translate because in New Brunswick we use the language primary healthcare nurse practitioners, and for those jurisdictions that have adult and pediatric streams as well. The outcomes of the practice analysis will form the basis for entry-level registration exams for NPs in Canada going forward. The project will be delivered in a phased approach over a 15-month period with a final report to the Canadian Council of RN Regulators by December of 2014. In an ongoing commitment to strengthen public accountability and promote safe, competent, and ethical nursing practice, the regulatory bodies for registered nurses across the country agreed in 2009 to work toward adding a nursing jurisprudence as a requirement for registration in their respective provinces and territories. And I'm now going to explain what jurisprudence is. Jurisprudence can be defined as, and I guess our parliamentarian will tell us if we're not got the appropriate definition, is having awareness of the legislation, regulations, standards, and policies that impact registered nurse and nurse practitioner practice. NANB began the process of identifying an appropriate model to introduce nursing jurisprudence as a requirement for registration for all new applicants in New Brunswick. This will become a mandatory requirement across Canada eventually, ensuring a registered nurse move throughout the country. They will be supported in understanding and meeting any legislative and regulatory requirements for their practice in each of the Canadian jurisdictions, thereby enhancing public protection. So an example would be, we absolutely know if you're working in long-term care, you probably don't have at the end of your fingertips the legislation around child protection. But we would expect registered nurses working in pediatric units to understand what are the legislative requirements to work in when you're working with that population. So the jurisprudence mandatory requirement will provide you with the materials so that you can be informed of that, and as you become registered as new graduates, for the students that are with us, you'll need to go through that process. We anticipate we're going to have an open book process so that you're aware and can find that information, because again, legislation changes. And that will be the same for any internationally educated nurses who come to New Brunswick or those who move between provinces, because legislative can be different in different jurisdictions. The Canadian Registered Nurse Examination, the CRNE, was administered in February, June, and October of 2013. There were 282 English and 154 French writers. The Canadian Nurse Practitioner exam was administered in May and October with a total of 10 writers, 6 in English and 4 in French. The next 2 slides show the numbers of registered nurses and nurse practitioners in our province in 2013. In 2013, 351 New Brunswick graduates were registered. This graph shows that the 2013 numbers are now equivalent to those registered nurses. If you can go back, Jen, to NB grads. Equivalent to those registered prior to the closure of our diploma schools. So we graduated, the last graduating class from diploma schools in December of 1996. They wrote their exams in January, and then we moved to the baccalaureate as entry. So that was why there was such a big dip then. It was that people needed to complete 2 more years. And over that period of time, we've been working our way back to producing the same number of graduates. And around 2006, 7, 8, we had an increase of about 75 funded seats, which have made a difference as well. Thanks, Jen. And so you've all heard the announcements about changes in the delivery of the UNB program in Bathurst. We also want to highlight that for the first time, UNB St. John, who is leading this program for English-speaking individuals, is offering an LPN to BN bridging program. And work has started at University of Moncton to establish the same program for Francophone LPNs. Nurse practitioners. I hope we're not all mixed up here. In 2013, there were 114 nurse practitioners, 114 nurse practitioners registered in New Brunswick. This includes graduates from our New Brunswick programs and other Canadian programs. On November the 21st, 2012, Health Canada issued new regulations under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, which will give broader prescriptive authority to NPs, authorizing them to prescribe certain controlled drugs and substances. These new regulations will allow NPs in all jurisdictions, with the exception of Yukon, to prescribe controlled substances under the Federal Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, enabling them to provide more timely and comprehensive care to their patients. Although these regulatory changes were approved at the federal level, further provincial and territory authorization is also required, and that's happened in New Brunswick. To prepare all registered nurse practitioners currently registered in New Brunswick to assume this additional prescriptive authority, the Board of Directors approved a rule amendment in October of 2013 requiring that all nurse practitioners complete an NANB approved educational program on prescribing controlled drugs and substances, and the program that has been approved by NANB is that offered by the Council of Ontario University Programs in Nursing through the University of Ottawa. Until this course is successfully completed, a nurse practitioner cannot prescribe controlled drugs and substances. A tentative date for implementation of this new prescriptive authority in 2014 has been identified, and we're anticipating this fall, and nurse practitioners actually will be receiving notices this week that things are moving forward. They can register for that program. Once the currently registered nurse practitioners that are working in the province and registered have completed that, those who are completing their education program will have that content integrated into their program. And as there may be some variation across Canada, if a nurse practitioner comes to New Brunswick from another jurisdiction, we'll have to validate that they have had the preparation required to give them that authority to practice. The federal and provincial governments have developed policies and funded initiatives in an effort to facilitate the integration of internationally educated health professions into our Canadian workforce by ensuring that the assessment and recognition of their qualifications is fair, transparent, and consistent. In 2011, NANB received funding for a 4-year period from Health Canada to develop a process for the assessment and integration of internationally educated nurses. Phase 1, which was 2011 to 2012, resulted in the establishment of accessible competency assessment and bridging programs for both Anglophones and Francophones. Phase 2, which was 2012 to 2013, focused on the development of a competency-based self-assessment tool for internationally educated nurses, and preparation workshop for the Canadian Registered Nurse exam. In phases 3 and 4, which we are in the midst of phase 3 now, tools to support the successful integration of IENs into the workforce and the development of a minimum data set for the collection and reporting of IEN statistics across the Atlantic Canada will be developed. And I think Beth is still with us, Beth McGuinness. She have to leave. There she is. I can't see her. She's behind the cameraman. I want to acknowledge Beth McGuinness and Mary as well for their support to us. This was certainly a challenge for NANB, and we absolutely believe that we need the support of government, and then that's really meaning citizens' money to do this, and that it isn't really a responsibility of registered nurses to look after that integration. And we've been very grateful for the support, and we are absolutely excited about the robustness of our assessment process now and the bridging that's available that's helping these people get integrated. So thank you both, Mary and Beth. This table shows the number of internationally educated nurse applicants and IENs that we have had over the last 9 years. You will notice a significant drop in applications since 2010, which is consistent with what is happening across the rest of the country, except in Ontario. So you see that our New Brunswick numbers have dropped in 2013 and that's applicants per year. I believe we have currently just over 30 files that remain open. We keep a file open for 2 years, but in 2013 we had below 20 applicants. I do want to explain the spikes in 2009 and 2010. If you've been here other years, you've heard the message already, but Alberta was booming. They needed registered nurses, and there were lots of nurses from around the world that came to Canada anticipating getting registered then and working in Alberta predominantly. You know, there were nurses looking to get to other provinces as well, but Alberta was the big phenomena. And there was a change in government and a change in policy in Alberta, and then these individuals were trying to find a place to stay in Canada, and we believe that's why we saw those spikes in 2009 and 2010. As compared to Ontario, who has about 6,000 files opened, and both Ontario and Alberta continue to get in the hundreds of applications every month. Renouvellement de l'immatriculation. I'm going to switch to French for a while.
Renewal registration. A fundamental responsibility of any regulatory body is to ensure competence on initial and ongoing registration. In this regard, NANB developed a mandatory continuing competence program to provide a framework for nurses to demonstrate how they are maintaining their competence and enhancing their practice. The CPP, which was established in 2008 and underwent comprehensive review in 2013. After 5 years of compliance with the CPP is monitored through an annual audit. In 2013, 418 registered nurses and 11 nurse practitioners were randomly selected as part of the annual audit of the competence maintenance program. The registration data, which is collected annually on the registration renewal forms, is a rich source of information that is used both provincially and nationally. NANB has data sharing agreements with the Canadian Institute for Health Information and the New Brunswick Department of Health for the purposes of health human resources planning. The 2013 data indicates there's 9,329 RNs, 114 NPs, and the average age of our membership is 45 years. The average age of RNs in New Brunswick who are 55 years and older has more than doubled as a percentage of our workforce in the last 12 years. The proportion of nurses over 55 years has more than doubled and goes to 10% in 2000, 25% in 2013. At the present time, 40% of our workforce is 50 years or older, which represents a bit more than 300 or 3,000, 33 or 3,400 nurses. Another key element of self-regulation is the development and maintenance of standards to assist nurses in providing safe, competent, and ethical care, irregardless of the setting in which they practice. Standards guide nurses in their practice and inform the public of their professional responsibilities. As I noted earlier, the revised standards of nursing education went to board for approval in February of 2013. Moreover, NANB also supports professional nursing practice by providing confidential consultation services to individual or groups of registered nurses in all practice areas and to the general public who may have questions about nursing practice. A practice consultation can be on one-on-one or group conversation by phone, in person, or on-site visit. In 2013, the Practice Department received 843 practice consultation calls during the year. The nature of the calls include interpretation of NNB's documents and legislation, as well on standards, for example, our Nurses Act, and so on. Giving advice on ethical behavior, issues of patient safety and appropriate action, conflict resolution, and the management of procedural and practice issues. Examples of practice issues include immunization, documentation, professional practice problems, delegation of procedures, self-employment, medical directives, medication administration, working with licensed practical nurses, working with unregulated care providers, and nurse practitioner practice. The trending of calls received helps NANB in the development of strategies and tools to respond to common and more frequently reported issues for nurses across New Brunswick.